How was it discovered? Imagine taking Mount Everest, flipping it upside down and dropping it into the ocean. Even then, the summit would still be more than 1.2 miles, 2 kilometers below the surface. Down there, the pressure is over 1,000 times greater than at sea level, strong enough to crush steel like paper. For decades, scientists were convinced that nothing could survive in such an extreme environment. Then, in 2022, underwater cameras captured footage that forced the scientific community to rethink everything. This place is called the Mariana Trench. Located in the western Pacific Ocean, it stretches 1,580 miles, 2,550 kilometers, and reaches an incredible depth of 36,201 feet, 11,034 meters below sea level. You might think, humans landed on the moon. How hard could exploring a trench be? The truth is surprising. 12 people have walked on the moon. Fewer than 30 people have ever seen the bottom of the Mariana Trench with their own eyes. So how did humanity even discover this place? Back in 1872, the British research ship HMS Challenger set sail with more than 220 crew members and 5 scientists. One of their missions was to test a popular scientific belief known as the azoic theory, which claimed that no life could exist below about 1,800 feet, 550 meters. Today, that sounds ridiculous, but at the time, almost everyone believed it. Think about it. Complete darkness, freezing temperatures, and pressure strong enough to crush a person instantly. How could anything possibly survive? The crew used a very simple method to measure the ocean. They lowered a rope with a heavy weight attached to the end and waited for it to hit the seafloor. Their rope was almost 23,000 feet, 7,000 meters long, more than enough for most oceans. But when they reached one area of the western Pacific, something unbelievable happened. The entire rope disappeared into the water, and the weight still hadn't reached the bottom. They tied on more rope, then more, until they had used every single rope on the ship. Even at 26,850 feet, 8,184 meters, they still hadn't touched the seafloor. That meant one thing. Beneath them lay a gigantic abyss no human had ever imagined. In 1951, another expedition aboard HMS Challenger 2 returned with advanced sonar equipment. This time they measured the true depth, 36,201 feet, 11,034 meters, nearly 10,000 feet, 3,000 meters, deeper than previously believed. The deepest point was named Challenger Deep, now recognized as the deepest known location on Earth. When the news spread, one young explorer couldn't stop thinking about it. His name was Jacques Piccard. He said, "I want to go down there." But how? At the time, a biologist named William Beebe had built a steel diving sphere that reached about 3,000 feet, 900 meters, while suspended from a cable. People asked him if it could reach the Mariana Trench. Beebe laughed. "If you want me dead, just say so." He wasn't joking. Every 33 feet, 10 meters underwater, adds another atmosphere of pressure. At 36,000 feet, a submarine must survive more than 1,000 atmospheres. Even a tiny flaw no larger than the tip of a needle could allow seawater to blast inside like a bullet, crushing everyone instantly. Fortunately, Jacques Piccard had an incredible father. Auguste Piccard, a world-famous physicist, had already made history by becoming the first human to reach the stratosphere, soaring more than 50,000 feet, 15,000 meters, above Earth in a balloon of his own design. When Jacques told his father about his dream of reaching the deepest place on Earth, Auguste didn't laugh. He got to work. Instead of building a stronger diving sphere, he invented something completely different, a revolutionary deep-sea vessel called Trieste. It used gasoline for buoyancy, since gasoline is lighter than water and doesn't compress under extreme pressure. Heavy iron ballast pulled the craft toward the ocean floor. When it was time to return, the crew simply released the iron weights, allowing the vessel to float back to the surface. It was a brilliantly simple solution. Then came the moment that would make history. On January 23, 1960, Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh climbed inside the tiny pressure sphere of the Trieste and began humanity's first journey to the deepest point on Earth. At first, the descent felt almost peaceful. The first 130 feet, 40 meters, were alive with colorful coral reefs and schools of tropical fish. It looked more like a vacation dive than a mission into the unknown. But as they passed 330 feet, 100 meters, sunlight rapidly disappeared. The cabin began to groan. Every few seconds, loud metallic creaks echoed through the vessel as its hull bent under unimaginable pressure. By 650 feet, 200 meters, daylight was gone. Complete darkness surrounded them. Their powerful searchlights illuminated only a few dozen feet ahead before the blackness swallowed the light. Then, tiny glowing dots appeared in the darkness. As they drifted closer, the explorers realized they were alive. Strange fish with razor-sharp teeth, bodies that glowed in the dark, creatures that looked more like monsters than anything from Earth. At around 3,300 feet, 1,000 meters, radio communication with the surface became unreliable. At 12,500 feet, 3,800 meters, they passed the resting place of the Titanic. Then, near 30,000 feet, 9,000 meters, disaster nearly struck. A deafening explosion echoed through the cabin. One of the outer acrylic windows had cracked under the crushing pressure. Don Walsh suggested aborting the mission. The risk was becoming enormous, but Jacques Piccard had waited his entire life for this moment. "We've come this far," he said. "We're going all the way." The Trieste continued sinking, minute after minute, hour after hour. Finally, after nearly 5 hours, the descent came to an end. The vessel gently settled onto the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The instruments read approximately 35,814 feet, 10,916 meters, the deepest place any human had ever reached. Looking through the cracked window, Piccard expected to find a silent, lifeless wasteland. Instead, he saw movement. A small flatfish, about 12 inches, 30 centimeters long, slowly swimming across the seabed. At a depth where pressure exceeded 1,000 times the pressure at sea level, where steel would be crushed, life existed. When they returned to the surface and shared what they had seen, many scientists refused to believe them. Some dismissed the story as impossible. But as technology improved and more expeditions followed, the evidence became undeniable. The deep ocean wasn't a dead world. It was an entire ecosystem unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Today, scientists divide the ocean into several distinct layers. From 0 to 660 feet, 0 to 200 meters, lies the sunlight zone, where enough light reaches the water for photosynthesis. Tiny plankton living here produce nearly half of all the oxygen on Earth. From 660 to 3,300 feet, 200 to 1,000 meters, is the twilight zone, where sunlight barely penetrates and many creatures generate their own light through bioluminescence. Some researchers believe this zone contains more fish than every other ocean layer combined. From 3,300 to 13,100 feet, 1,000 to 4,000 meters, is the midnight zone, a realm of permanent darkness inhabited by bizarre animals like transparent-headed fish and anglerfish that hunt using glowing lure. From 13,100 to 19,700 feet, 4,000 to 6,000 meters, lies the abyssal zone, home to giant squid and strange deep-sea octopuses, drifting silently through the darkness. Everything deeper than 19,700 feet, 6,000 meters, belongs to the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the ancient Greek underworld. For years, scientists believed no fish could survive there. Then, in 2012, they discovered transparent snailfish living at an astonishing depth of 27,349 feet, 8,336 meters. Their bodies are almost entirely soft tissue with very little bone. Ironically, that softness is exactly what allows them to survive pressures capable of crushing steel. But around 27,000 feet appears to be the absolute limit for fish. Below that, only microorganisms and tiny invertebrates remain. Yet those microscopic organisms may hold some of the greatest scientific secrets ever discovered. Many have incredibly slow metabolisms, allowing them to survive for tens of thousands or even millions of years. Their extraordinary ability to protect and repair DNA under crushing pressure could one day help scientists better understand aging, disease, and even human longevity. On November 10, 2020, China's Fendoje submersible carried 3 people to a depth of 35,791 feet, 10,909 meters, the largest crew ever to reach such depths. With that mission, China became the 5th country to master crewed dives beyond 10,000 meters. From the moment the HMS Challenger first lowered a rope into these mysterious waters in 1872 to today, more than 150 years have passed. And despite all our advances, scientists estimate we've explored less than 5% of this vast abyss. What else is hiding down there? Could entirely unknown forms of life still be waiting to be discovered? No one knows. But one thing is certain. In the darkest, coldest, most extreme place on our planet, life never surrendered. It adapted. It evolved. It survived. And after millions of years of silence, it reminds us of one humbling truth. Humanity still knows astonishingly little about its own planet. Perhaps that's the greatest mystery the deep ocean has to offer. The greatest battle you won before you were born, before you took your very first breath, before your heart ever beat outside the womb, you had already survived one of the greatest battles of your entire existence. Your story began with hundreds of millions of sperm launched into a battlefield, unlike anything imaginable. The moment the journey started, the odds were already against you. Within minutes, the highly acidic environment of the female reproductive tract eliminated millions. This wasn't simply a race, it was a ruthless process of natural selection. There would be no second place. Only one could succeed. Your tiny tail was your only engine, driving you forward with every movement. But strength alone wasn't enough. Timing was just as important. Only once each month during ovulation does the entrance to the uterus become easier to pass. Hormones temporarily soften the cervical mucus, creating a narrow passage that allows only the healthiest and most active sperm to continue. Countless others become trapped or lose their energy before making it through. You survived that first challenge, but the real battle was only beginning. Once inside the uterus, you entered hostile territory. Although the mother's body was preparing for pregnancy, her immune system still recognized your father's DNA as foreign. White blood cells, whose job is to destroy invaders, surrounded the area. They attacked relentlessly, eliminating millions more competitors. Every second, fewer survivors remained. If you could have looked behind you, you would have seen a battlefield filled with those who never reached the next stage. Only a handful of sperm continued forward, exhausted but still determined, eventually reaching the fallopian tube. There, something extraordinary happened. Instead of attacking, the mother's body briefly allowed the strongest survivors to remain alive. Chemical signals created a safer environment while they waited for the arrival of the egg. Unlike sperm, which are produced continuously throughout a man's life, a woman's eggs are created before she is even born. While she is still developing inside her own mother's womb, her ovaries contain between 1 and 2 million immature eggs. Most naturally disappear over time. By puberty, only a few 100,000 remain. Across her entire lifetime, only about 400 to 500 eggs will ever complete their journey to ovulation. Every month, one receives its opportunity. When that special moment arrived, the ovary released a single mature egg into the fallopian tube. It released chemical signals that acted like a beacon in the darkness. The surviving sperm instantly detected the signal. The final race had begun. Dozens of sperm reached the egg almost together. Instead of immediately competing against one another, they unknowingly worked together. Each released enzymes that slowly weakened the egg's protective outer layer. Then came the decisive moment. One sperm finally broke through. You. The instant you entered, the egg triggered an extraordinary defense mechanism. Its outer membrane instantly hardened, permanently blocking every other sperm from entering. The race was over. Out of hundreds of millions of competitors, you were the only winner. But becoming a fertilized egg was only the beginning. You were now a single cell carrying the complete genetic blueprint for an entirely new human being. Within about 24 hours, that one cell divided into 2, then 4, then 8, 16, 32, 64. The process continued with astonishing precision. Every new cell received its own instruction. Some would eventually become your heart, others your lungs, brain, liver, skin, bones, muscles, eyes, and every organ that keeps you alive today. This wasn't simply rapid growth. It was one of the most complex biological construction projects in nature. Yet many embryos never make it this far. Scientists estimate that roughly 70% of fertilized eggs fail to develop normally during the earliest stages and are naturally lost before successful implantation. In many cases, the mother never even realizes fertilization occurred. If you survived those first critical days, you successfully implanted into the wall of the uterus. Only then did pregnancy truly begin. Around the 3rd week, something incredible happened. Your tiny heart started beating. Although no bigger than a poppy seed, it had already begun pumping blood through your developing body. During the following weeks, your body changed at an astonishing speed. For a brief period, your embryo developed structures that resemble those found in other vertebrate embryos, reflecting the shared evolutionary history of life on Earth. Tiny limb buds appeared. Your eyes began forming. Your nervous system expanded rapidly. Your brain started organizing billions of future neural connections. Inside complete darkness, your body carefully assembled 206 bones, more than 600 muscles, and one of the most complex organs in the known universe, the human brain. Every second mattered. Every cell had to divide at exactly the right time. Every tissue had to develop in perfect coordination. Even a tiny mistake during these early stages could permanently affect development. As your face formed, another delicate process took place. Your upper lip and palate needed to fuse together perfectly. This critical stage lasted only a short period during early pregnancy. If severe developmental disruptions occurred during that window, conditions such as cleft lip or cleft palate could result. The smile you wear today began during those remarkable hours before you were even aware of your own existence. Month after month, you continued growing. Your tiny fingers developed fingerprints unlike anyone else's. Your ears became capable of recognizing sounds. You began responding to voices. You practiced breathing movements long before taking your first real breath. By the final months, your brain was developing at an extraordinary pace, preparing you for life outside the womb. Throughout this entire journey, however, someone else was making incredible sacrifices. Your mother. Pregnancy transformed nearly every system inside her body. Her breathing became faster to provide additional oxygen. Her heart pumped significantly more blood every minute. Her total blood volume increased dramatically to nourish the growing baby. Her kidneys and liver worked harder than ever before. Her hormones continuously changed to support your development. As your skeleton formed, her body carefully regulated calcium and nutrients to meet your needs. As you grew larger, the expanding uterus pushed against her organs, compressed blood vessels, stretched muscles, and placed tremendous strain on her back and joints. Simple activities like sleeping, walking, or even standing could become exhausting. Despite the discomfort, her body continued adapting every single day. Finally, after approximately 9 months, the last challenge arrived: childbirth. One of the most physically demanding experiences the human body can endure. Powerful contraction, hours of intense effort, extraordinary pain. Every contraction brought you one step closer to the world. Then you took your first breath, you cried, and everything changed. The exhaustion, the discomfort, the sacrifice suddenly became worthwhile because in that moment, your mother was finally holding the child she had protected every second of the journey. Before you ever opened your eyes, before you learned to speak, before you took your very first step, you had already overcome impossible odds. Out of hundreds of millions of competitors, against countless biological obstacles, you survived. Your existence is the result of billions of years of evolution, extraordinary biological precision, incredible resilience, and a mother's remarkable sacrifice. Every person alive today has won this same impossible race, and perhaps that's the most extraordinary victory any of us will ever achieve.